And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Friday, March 7th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we are going to start off the show. We are going to talk about the Lakers-Knicks game from last night. It was a very entertaining game. Lakers winning 113-109. They now extend their winning streak to 8 straight games. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the Jalen Brunson injury as well. We'll talk about something that I was originally going to start out with, but then as I watched the Lakers-Knicks game, I'm like, no, this is what we're going to start with today. And we're going to talk about a couple of moves the Jacksonville Jaguars made. They traded Christian Kirk within the division, wide receiver, to the Houston Texans. And then we'll also talk about them cutting tight end Evan Engram. So some changes there. We'll talk about, in the third segment, a couple of things regarding teams in the AFC North. So the Bengals, they have granted Trey Hendrickson permission to seek a trade. And then we'll also talk about the Browns once again restructuring Deshaun Watson's contract to clear up some cap space. We'll get into that. We'll also talk about the Dodgers putting a pause on Shohei Ohtani's rehab when it comes to pitching. So we'll get into that. And then in the final part of the show, I will continue my season overviews. And today we'll be talking about the Green Bay Packers. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Lakers-Knicks game from last night. This was a very entertaining game. I missed the beginning of it, but I tuned in for pretty much 3/4 of the game, and it was very entertaining, especially towards the end, between the fourth quarter and overtime. It was just a lot of fun watching this game. And, in the beginning, the Lakers, they had the lead. The Knicks kind of took control of this game for most of it, but then the Lakers came back, and they pushed it into overtime, and they were able to get the win, 113-109. But the Knicks, they should have been able to hold on and win this game. And they definitely have been playing with a different kind of swagger since Mitchell Robinson has come back. And you got Karl-Anthony Towns last night back. So the team was whole for this game. And OG Anunoby was hitting his threes. He had a good game last night. Jalen Brunson was unreal. And then, unfortunately, he got hurt. The Knicks looked good. But then you go on the other side, and you see what the Lakers are doing lately with Luka and LeBron. And once again, those two guys had big performances last night. Got clutch shots from both of them late. And they were able to win the game. Now, looking at, towards the end of the game here, when we go into the fourth quarter, the Lakers were down, but, they battled back. They ended up tying the game. You got clutch threes from LeBron and also Gabe Vincent, too. Gabe Vincent had some big shots down the stretch there last night. And he finished the game going 4 for 5 from 3. Actually, no, 4 for 5 from the field, but 4 for 4 from 3. Finished with 12 points. LeBron had 31 last night. Luka had 32. The Knicks actually were 5-0 on the season in overtime games. This was their first overtime loss of the year. So I didn't realize that. But it's just back and forth towards the end of the game. I mean, you had Jalen Brunson answering what the Lakers would do. It really was a lot of fun to watch. But when we get into overtime, Lucas scores the first 5 points. He has that tough shot over Cat, the 2-pointer, and then he just chucks up that 3. And, the Lakers went up by 5. But Brunson still kept them in it. And then unfortunately, he draws a foul, ends up getting hurt. He ends up stepping on Austin Reeves' foot, and he rolls his ankle, and it looked brutal on the replay. But it doesn't seem like it wasn't a fracture, but he is going to miss some time. And he still was able to make his 2 free throws, but after he made those 2 free throws, he was just standing at the free throw line. So they had to take him out of the game. And then the Knicks just could not get a shot off on, their last possession, or the second to last possession of the game. But OG Anunoby was able to pull off an and one, and it looked like maybe they were going to get within one. So, if they foul the Lakers, it's still a 1-possession game if, the Lakers make both free throws, which they did. LeBron ends up making both free throws. But OG Anunoby ends up missing the free throw. So they end up losing by 4, and Brunson ends up being hurt. Once Jalen Brunson got hurt and he left the game, the Lakers were definitely going to win. And now you look at the Knicks without Brunson, we'll see how long the timetable is for his return. But any kind of absence of Jalen Brunson is going to hurt this team. And right now they're 3rd in the Eastern Conference. They're 3.5 games up on the Bucks. But that could change in a hurry if they lose Brunson. And like I said, he was great last night. 10 assists. He had 39 points. He's actually 1 for 7 from 3. Both teams did not shoot great from the 3-point line. The Knicks actually, they went 10 of 43 from 3 last night. And then the Lakers, they weren't doing good either. I mean, they still finished 14 of 42. But towards the end of the game, they started hitting their threes. LeBron had the clutch 3, like I said, to tie the game. I believe it was to 96. Luka had some big threes, and I just mentioned Gabe Vincent too. And you got key contributions from Dalton Knecht off the bench. He had 11 points. He went 3 for 7 from 3. But yeah, both teams did not shoot well from the 3-point line. I mean, the Knicks, like I said, 10 for 43. They shot 23%. And then you had the Lakers shooting 33% from 3. It's not good. But both teams were good shooting free throws. The Lakers out-rebound the Knicks. Lakers had more turnovers in the game, but they had more points off turnovers than the Knicks did. But they also disappointing last night, and I believe this was his first game back, and that was Karl Anthony Towns. Missed some time due to personal reasons. He had 14 rebounds last night, but only 12 points. He went 3 of 13 from the field and 1 for 6 from 3. They needed him to step up when Brunson left the game, and he wasn't able to. And also Mikal Bridges, he only had 6 points last night. OG Anunoby, like I said, he made some threes. He actually only went 4 for 11 from 3, but he had 20 points. Nobody really stepped up on the bench. Deuce McBride went 0 for 6 from the field. Cameron Payne only had 3 points. That was a tough loss, though, for the Knicks. They did play well. It's just you come up short. Lakers are playing really good right now. Like I said, 8 straight. And, yeah, the sky's the limit for what this team could do with LeBron and Luka. Now, we got to see how this team looks when we get to a 7-game series in the playoffs. This is a team that could definitely make a run. And then with the Knicks, look, you just got to hope that Brunson gets healthy and he's back, towards the end of the regular season and for the postseason. The Knicks are playing better basketball now that they're whole. But now they're not whole anymore because now they just lost their best player. And guys are going to have to step up. They could definitely tread water if Brunson's not out for the rest of the year, which doesn't seem like he is. It could be a high ankle sprain. It is an ankle sprain. which, I mean, but if you watch the replay, you think to yourself, how did he not break it? But thankfully, best case scenario is he misses the next, couple of weeks or so, and then he comes back, and then we go from there. So, but yeah, that definitely, if you're a Knicks fan, that was a tough loss. And they had that game. They were up for most of the game. But they never were able to slam the door shut completely on the Lakers. They got to as much as like 12 points, but the Lakers, were able to hang around, and then they started to go on a run. And eventually they were able to overcome the deficit and get the game to overtime. The Knicks had a chance to win the game at the very end of regulation. They just took too long. Josh Hart was able to put the ball in the basket, but the buzzer sounded. So, if he was able to get that shot off sooner, the Knicks would have won at the buzzer, but they did not. So, yeah, that was a tough loss for the Knicks. And, we'll see what happens now with Brunson being out. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the game from last night. What were your takeaways from it? Also, some other NBA action. Steph Curry finished with 40 points last night. Warriors pulled off a 22-point comeback to win against the Nets, 121-119. You also had the Hawks defeating the Pacers, Celtics winning against the 76ers, Rockets winning again, 109-97 over the Pelicans, and then you had the Bulls winning 125-123 over the Magic. And then tonight, the Knicks actually do play again. They play against the Clippers, so they're staying out west. So they will not have Brunson. But you also have Memphis against Dallas, Phoenix against Denver. Those are some of the NBA action for tonight. But I don't know exactly what the timetable is on Brunson. We'll find out more. But it's not season ending, which is very good news. He didn't break anything. So we'll find out what happens. But let me know what you guys think about that game from last night. Very entertaining. Lakers win 113-109. They have now won 8 straight. So we are going to take our first break of the show now. And then when we come back, we will discuss some of the moves that the Jaguars made yesterday, trading Christian Kirk and releasing Evan Engram. So we'll talk about that when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to now talk about a couple of moves that the Jaguars made yesterday regarding some of their pass catchers. So they made some cuts along with some more cuts along with cutting Evan Engram and trading Christian Kirk. Now, they were originally going to just cut Christian Kirk, but then the Texans swooped in and said, hey, we'll trade for him. We need a receiver. and they ended up just trading him to the Texans, and I believe it was for a 7th-round pick. Now, Christian Kirk is in the final year of his 4-year contract, and it did get off to a good start. His first season back in 2022, that was when the Jags made the playoffs. They got to the divisional round against the Chiefs. He had 1,100 yards receiving, 84 receptions. He had 8 touchdowns, and he played in all 17 games. But then only played in 12 games in 2023. He only had 3 touchdowns, and he had 787 receiving yards. And then last year, he had 27 receptions for 379 yards and 1 touchdown. And he had a collarbone injury. And the Jaguars felt like they wanted to cut bait with him, and that's what they did. And he goes to a team within the division, a team that needs wide receiver help, so that makes sense. Texans didn't want him to hit the open market. And it's kind of like what they did with the Bengals last year. They traded for Joe Mixon because the Bengals were going to cut Joe Mixon, and then the Texans said, we'll take him. And that ended up working out because Mixon had a good year. And Christian Kirk, he just slides in next to Nico Collins and is that number 2 next year because it doesn't seem like they're going to bring back Stephon Diggs. And Tank Dell is probably going to be out for the whole year, recovering from, his knee injury. So that one I was not surprised by. I was a little surprised by Evan Engram being cut. Now, they have another tight end, Brenton Strange, who stepped up when Engram was hurt. But I felt like Engram was a guy you could still keep around. But he didn't really... He was out with injury last year. He only played in 9 games. 365 yards, 1 touchdown. Previous year, 2023, he was very good. 963 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, and then he had 4 touchdowns in 2022 as well. But, yeah, I was definitely a little surprised by that. I thought maybe they would have kept him around. But I guess not. They want to just do a complete reset. I mean, obviously they're not going to do anything with Brian Thomas Jr. He's the guy in Jacksonville. That's Trevor Lawrence's number 1 option. But you could also say after the Kirk trade, Evan Engram would have had the highest salary cap figure on the roster, almost $20 million in 2025. He was set to earn $14.75 million, which would have been the final year of his 3-year contract, which was $25.5 million guaranteed. But yeah, they cut ties with him, and he wasn't the only guy. Those weren't the only 2 players that ended up getting let go. They let go of Devin Duvernay. They also let go of Josh. I didn't even realize they had Josh Reynolds. They had Josh Reynolds and also Ronald Darby, the corner. So by these moves, they have saved $25.5 million in cap space. So, look, they are going about it this way. It's a new regime, and they're going to have to address a lot of key positions over the next 2 months between free agency and the draft. And looking at, I'm assuming the cap on Over the Cap, their cap space has been updated. But depending on how much cap space they have, so right now they have around $49 million in cap space. And I don't know if it's updated yet, but they definitely are going to, maybe they draft best player available in the upcoming NFL draft. They could go receiver, they could go offensive line. Maybe they address the defensive side of the ball. Defense does need a lot of work. Defense was not good last year. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, this is a work in progress. And I think the main thing for the Jaguars next year is they keep Trevor Lawrence healthy. And you got to hope that Trevor Lawrence has a big year. Now, I don't think losing Christian Kirk and Evan Engram is going to be detrimental to Trevor Lawrence. They're going to replace these guys. I think these guys are easily replaceable. The Evan Engram move does still surprise me a bit, but they'll figure it out. You got a stud in Brian Thomas Jr. I like what I saw out of Tank Bigsby last year. We'll see if Travis Etienne bounces back or maybe they end up trading him or something. I don't know. Because Travis Etienne had a big year in 2023. He was one of the best running backs in football, and then he was just non-existent last year. I don't know what happened there. So, we'll see what happens, but there's a lot of work to do with this roster. But in terms of the trade that they made with the Texans, like I said, the Texans address a need. They take a flyer on Christian Kirk. He's got 1 year left on his contract. And he's not coming in to be the number one receiver. They have that in Nico Collins. Now, you do worry, last couple of years, he's been banged up. Can he stay on the field? And if he can, this could definitely be a low-risk, high-reward move by the Texans. And you didn't give up that much to get him. You gave up a 7th-round pick. So, I think it's an okay move for the Texans. But we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But it is interesting that the Jaguars were like, "Yeah, we'll give him to you." But I guess maybe they could have been one of the only teams that reached out, and the Jaguars are like, "Hey, we'll take a draft pick rather than just cut him and give him up for nothing." So, and I mean, I don't think Christian Kirk is going to come back and haunt the Jaguars. It's not. The Jaguars, like I've been saying, they have a lot of work to do with this team. So, but a lot of moves, a lot of cuts have been made over the last several days. Next week, the new league year begins. So, a lot of stuff is going to go down. And maybe the Jaguars make more moves. I think Mitch Morse, their center, retired. So that's a position that they are going to have to address. Yeah, so he did retire after 10 seasons. Offensive line is definitely an area they need to address. You got to protect your quarterback. And right now, I can see if I pull up the Jaguars' current depth chart. With now that Evan Engram and Christian Kirk are no longer there. So right now, you got Brian Thomas Jr., but then after that, I forgot they had Gabe Davis. Are they really going to keep Gabe Davis? I feel like he's somebody else that they should maybe move off of too. Because last year, I mean, he was not great. 20 receptions, 239 yards, 2 touchdowns. How many games did he play in? He didn't play in every game either. He got hurt at 1.2. Trying to pull up his season. So, played in only 10 games. And it's amazing because you would have thought after that play, I mean, everybody thought this, after the playoff game against the Chiefs, that he was going to be the next big thing. And it just never happened. But yeah, you got Gabe Davis, you got Parker Washington. Those are your top 3 receivers right now. So, receiver is definitely going to be a position that they address this offseason. Tight end, we'll see. Brenton Strange last year, he had 2 touchdowns. He had 411 receptions. And the Jaguars, they're picking right now. They are picking at 5. So they could draft Tetero and McMillan. But then you got the Patriots who are ahead of them, and the Patriots are definitely drafting a receiver. So they could be drafting either Travis Hunter or McMillan. Or maybe the Jaguars adjust another position. Or they could trade down. We'll see. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the moves that the Jaguars made to clear up cap space. What do you think they're going to do this offseason? Who do you think they could potentially bring in? There's definitely a lot of areas they could address. This team has a lot of holes. So we'll see what happens. But before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will discuss a couple of AFC North teams, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. We'll talk about Trey Hendrickson getting permission from the Bengals to seek out a trade, and also the Browns once again restructuring Deshaun Watson's contract. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about a couple of things regarding AFC North teams, the Bengals and the Browns. So first thing we will discuss is Trey Hendrickson. So the Bengals recently, they granted him permission to seek out a trade. And he's coming off of an all-pro season. He led the league in sacks. He's been their best pass rusher. But he's in the final year of his contract. And based off of what's going on with the Bengals, it looks like they are prioritizing offense over defense. So they could bring back T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, but it looks like Trey Hendrickson could be on his way out. And now the Bengals' defense is going to get even worse. That was the problem last year, was their defense. And now you're trading away, you're letting your best defensive player go. And, you know, we hear Joe Burrow saying, you know, we got to keep everybody. Well, it's just impossible. You're not going to be able to keep everybody. And, you know, we talk about Myles Garrett and how he wants to be traded. Well, the Browns don't want to trade him. The Browns are going to try to do everything they can to keep him. Now, ultimately, they're going to be forced to have to let him go because it's over in Cleveland. It's over. But who knows how long that's going to take. So that could lead to a lot of teams that maybe are interested in trying to get Myles Garrett to pivot and now try to get Trey Hendrickson. Now, is Trey Hendrickson the same player as Myles Garrett? No. But a lot of teams out there need pass rushers. And you look at the Eagles, and they might lose Josh Sweat in free agency. So they might say, hey, what's going on in Cleveland? They don't want, you know, we're tired of playing the waiting game on Myles Garrett. Let's go and get Trey Hendrickson. Put Trey Hendrickson on the Eagles. And that would be a problem. But there's plenty of teams out there. The Lions are another team that are trying to acquire Myles Garrett. They could go after him. The Buccaneers, that's a team that I think needs a pass rusher. They got to improve their front four. The Chargers released Joey Bosa. Khalil Mack is not going to be on the team. Maybe not. So, that could be a possibility. The Falcons are a team that could use another pass rusher. The Commanders. The Bears are another team. They're looking to add someone opposite of not Josh Sweat, but Montez Sweat. The Packers, the Colts. These are teams that are listed on an NFL article that I'm looking at, which makes sense. Those teams need pass rushers. But, it's all about, do you have the assets to give up to get them? Do you have the cap space? That's a whole other thing. That's a whole other thing as well. But that could be the consolation prize if Myles Garrett and the Browns just continue this standoff. Because, I think some team, like the Eagles, I say the Eagles, they could pivot and go to Trey Hendrickson, but they could also afford to wait and see how it plays out. They just won the Super Bowl. Right now, they're the best team. They could afford it, but some of these other teams that, are in desperate need of pass rushers, they're going to have to pivot. Like some of these other teams, the Buccaneers. I mean, I don't know if the Buccaneers are going to, trade for him, but, that's a team that could use a pass rusher. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're in on... it seems like everybody would probably be in on Myles Garrett, but they're only going to trade him to one team if, when it comes up. So, but we'll have to wait and see. But for the Bengals, though, you don't like this because your defense is getting weaker. And that means you're really going to have to, because you're basically doing what the Cowboys did last offseason. Because I think we're heading towards that kind of an offseason where they're just going to pay all their guys and then they're just going to have to rely on their draft picks. They are really going to have to bank on their draft picks. If they don't hit on their draft picks, I mean, even if they do, this defense is still not going to be good. I mean, it depends on what they do. Like, maybe they somehow improve this defense. And you could, move some money around and maybe you're able to improve this defense. But you can't go into next year and you trade Trey Hendrickson, but you don't replace him. And I get what the Bengals are trying to do. They want to keep the band together on offense, but your defense is going to suffer because of it. Then we're going to have a repeat of what we just saw, where the Bengals offense is one of the best in the league, but their defense is the complete opposite. And the Bengals are going to have to put up 30, 35 points a game, get into these shootouts, and Joe Burrow has to play perfect football. No turnovers at all. You can't turn the ball over at all. Now, look, they played better down the stretch. I mean, you could look at some of the opponents that they went up against and you say, well, yeah, I mean, you should beat this team. I mean, the Steelers were reeling last game of the season. I mean, yes, you did beat the Broncos. Broncos were a good team last year. But, and the Cowboys with Cooper Rush. Who else did they beat? Was the Raiders within that winning streak? Because the Raiders weren't good either. So the Bengals during their winning streak to finish out the year. So they beat the Cowboys without without Dak Prescott, with Cooper Rush at quarterback. They beat the Titans. They beat the Browns, the Broncos, and the Steelers. So you could say the Broncos and the Steelers are really their only valid wins. And even with the Steelers are just in the midst of a losing streak. Broncos, yeah, that's the one I would say, yeah, that was a good win. But the Titans and the Browns are picking in the top 2 in the NFL draft. So, yeah, we'll see what the Bengals do, but look, it'll be cool to see T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and that offense clicking next year, but could be more of the same of what we saw in 2024, where the defense is not good. And now you're trading an all-pro defensive end. Yeah, defense is going to get weaker. But we'll see how he's replaced. All right, so now let's get into Deshaun Watson. So the Browns once again have restructured his contract, and they have cleared up, I think, around $36 million in cap space, which is a lot. And this is something, we're used to this. This is what they've been doing. This is what they've been doing for the last couple of years now, is, making changes to Deshaun Watson's contract. So, yeah, nearly $36 million in cap space. His salary in 2025 is fully guaranteed, and it's $46 million. And now he's going to receive it as a bonus rather than a salary, because the signing bonus doesn't go against the cap. But the Browns are just doing this to kind of prolong, having to, pay some of that contract right away. But it's amazing how this contract is fully guaranteed. It's unbelievable. And he's not even going to be playing next year. He's not even going to be playing. You're going to have a rookie quarterback most likely, and you're probably going to have to bring in another veteran. He played, when he got hurt against the Bengals, that was the last game that he'll probably ever play in his life. I really would be surprised if I see him on another team and back on the football field. I don't see it. I don't see it. And once again, I'm going to get redundant here. That trade is going to go down as one of the worst trades in NFL history. The Browns really thought they were getting the Deshaun Watson that we saw for the first part of his career. And it just never materialized into that. He hasn't been able to stay on the field. Gets hurt. Back-to-back years, season-ending injuries. And on top of that, you gave up 3 first-round picks to acquire him, and you helped the Texans accelerate their rebuild. And now, last 2 years, they've been in the playoffs. They've been winners of their division. And the Browns, yeah, you went 11-6 in 2023 and you made the playoffs, but you were doing it with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is not going to be the long-term answer at quarterback. And then in 2024, you figure, Deshaun Watson's not playing well. Hey, look, they won 11 games last year. Kevin Stefanski, Coach of the Year. They'll be able to do it again. Nope. You only won 3 games. Now you're picking in the top 2. You have the second pick in the draft. Now, it's going to be hard to mess that up because you should be getting a good player. But then again, people have their concerns with the quarterbacks. But I think in the right situations, if they're done right, they could pan out. But the Browns, is that, the best spot to end up in? With the amount of quarterbacks that they've gone through in their franchise? They had Baker Mayfield, and they traded him. Yeah, they did trade him. They traded him to Carolina. And now he finds a home in Tampa. Should have kept him. But they didn't. They felt like Deshaun Watson was going to be a massive upgrade. And that hasn't happened. That has not happened. So it's just, eventually they will pay off that whole contract, but it's kind of turning into the football edition of Bobby Bonilla. That's really what it's turning into. Now, I'm not saying that, because Bobby Bonilla played baseball, way back, and the Mets are still paying him. But this is what we're going to be seeing over the next several years, is just restructuring, and they're gonna have to pay him off when he might not even be gonna be on the team, and they could still be paying him. Listen, they made this bed. They're gonna have to sleep in it. It is what it is. They took a chance, and it flopped. So we'll see what they do in the draft, who they end up with. But if you think the Browns are going to be good in 2025, with the stuff that's going on, not just with him, but you talked about Myles Garrett, they're not going to be a good team. They're not. So let me know what you guys think, though, about these two headlines. What are your thoughts on them? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our next break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about a little baseball here. We'll talk about the Dodgers hitting the pause button on Shohei Ohtani's rehab, his pitching rehab. And we'll get into that. I'll give you my thoughts on it when we come back. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now talk about the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani. So they have kind of paused Ohtani's pitching rehab, and this is what Dave Roberts had to say, the manager, on this. He said, "We're just trying to make it a broad time to return. We just don't know. So I think that when he's ready, we'll know, but I don't want to put any kind of expectation on you guys or Shohei." It doesn't seem like he had a setback or anything. Kind of just seems like they're being careful with Ohtani, because you also have to remember the guy got hurt in the World Series too, and suffered the shoulder injury. So he's also working his way back from that as well. So it's kind of a rehab both as a hitter and a pitcher, but he was supposedly he was going to come back and pitch in May, but now that's kind of up in the air at this point. Now, he has not thrown off a mound since February 25th, and he's not going to face hitters until supposedly when the team returns from its season opening series in Japan on March 18th and 19th. He's still playing catch, but again, it seems like things have slowed down now with him getting back on the mound and pitching. Now, he got off to a good start with the spring because he homered in his first at-bat of the spring. And here's the thing. The Dodgers can afford to take their time with Ohtani because they have so much pitching depth. You signed Roki Sasaki, you signed Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow's coming back. You got Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and you got some other guys as well. They re-signed Clayton Kershaw, which I don't know I don't know if Kershaw is actually going to be ready for the start of the season, but they have him. Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin. They have a ton of pitching depth. So if Ohtani's not ready, they'll be okay, pitching wise. Now, the team is planning on going to a 6-man rotation once he comes back. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But you can never have too much pitching. And that's why, the Dodgers, with their financial flexibility, they are able to they could weather the storm here with Ohtani. And also the other thing, too, I say that, but hey, they won the World Series last year. Ohtani did not throw a single pitch. So they'll be okay, as long as he's in the lineup. Now, if he misses games not being in the lineup, that could be an issue. Could be an issue. But then again, you say, well, they have Freddie Freeman, they have Mookie Betts, they have Teoscar Hernandez. They'd be fine there too. But the thing you have to pay attention to is, Ohtani at some point, he's just going to be a DH. I really want to see how long is he going to pitch. Because, this is not the first time that he's had, an injury to his, his pitching arm. At some point, the plug is going to be pulled on that, and he's just going to be a hitter. Now, he's going to be a great hitter for a long time. I mean, he won an MVP last year being a DH, and he's stealing bases. He's a great player. But, from our perspective, we're going to say, you're paying a guy all that money just to be a DH when you're paying him to be both a hitter and a pitcher. But the Dodgers could say, well, we got the money, we don't care. And then that's it. But Ohtani is, going to be a great hitter for a long time. So even if, the pitching's not there, if he's still got the bat, it's like, who cares? The Dodgers will fill out the spots in their rotation, and it's not going to matter. But I don't know. That's just something that I would have kind of an issue with. Well, I do have an issue with. But hey, if you're winning World Series, who cares? And the Dodgers have a great chance to go out there and win another one this year. They went out and improved the bullpen. They improved the rotation. They brought back Teoscar Hernandez. This team really doesn't have any flaws. Now, I don't really agree with Mookie Betts being moved from the outfield into the infield. I think he should just play where he normally does, but that's just me. But you know what? He's a team guy. He says, put me wherever. So, and you have to respect that. And I'm fine with the Dodgers being careful with Ohtani. And, making sure that everything is right when he does come back and pitch. And I want to see this Dodgers rotation at full strength. With Sasaki and Yamamoto and Ohtani all in the same Dodgers rotation. How is that, how is that going to look? I mean, Ohtani's definitely going to be rusty. And Roki Sasaki impressed in his debut. Yamamoto looked good when I watched him in his first spring training start. And then we'll see how, the former Tampa Bay Rays duo do together in this rotation. We saw a little bit of Glasnow last year, but he got hurt. And Blake Snell. It's a very good rotation. And like I said, if some guys get hurt, they got the depth. They'll figure it out, though, because, I mean, go back to last year. When I did that segment on Nestor Cortez and, him saying that the Yankees were the better team, and I did a short on that, and someone commented, the Dodgers were at 75%, and they still won. I mean, think about it. They had Jack Flaherty, who they acquired at the trade deadline. You had Walker Buehler and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And then in the other games, you just used your bullpen. They were able to win the World Series with a three-man rotation. And with Walker Buehler, who struggled in the regular season, Jack Flaherty, like I said, they acquired him from the Tigers. And Yamamoto was a rookie. Now, Look at how different this rotation is going to be. Jack Flaherty went back to the Tigers. Walker Buehler is now with the Red Sox. And now you're going to have Glass now back. You have Blake Snell. You got Sasaki, Yamamoto, and Ohtani's going to come back. So, we'll see how it goes. But they're being careful with Ohtani. Got to make sure he's 100%. And, when he comes back to the rotation, that's going to be a highly anticipated return to the mound. How is he going to look? I mean, there's definitely going to be rust, but how is he going to look? We'll have to wait and see on that. But, the Dodgers, they are in a division that has gotten better. The Diamondbacks got better. Padres, as of right now, they're still intact. And then, we'll see. The Giants made some moves. It's not really going to matter. I mean, in my opinion, the Dodgers are still going to probably win this division. But this division is built on pitching, with these teams. Each team, well, no offense, but except for the Rockies, they have, 2 frontline starters. 2 to 3. Diamondbacks, they got 3. The Giants, well, they have Logan Webb. I mean, Justin Verlander, we'll see what they get out of him. But it's gonna be interesting. And the Padres, you got Cease and Michael King. But we'll see. I mean, the Dodgers are going to be a team that everybody's going to be coming after. And what kind of season are they going to have now after being World Series champs? We will find out. We will find out. We are getting close. I want to get past spring training already. I really just want to get past it. I was watching the Yankees yesterday, and they had their it could be their opening day lineup. Well, if it is, we might be in a little bit of trouble because Trent Grisham was starting yesterday. But I just want to get to the real thing. Just get me to March 27th. It's in 20 days. It's in now less than 3 weeks. I'm excited. But let me know what you guys think about the Ohtani stuff, how the Dodgers are handling Ohtani and his rehab. Let me know in the comments. So we will take our final break of the show. When we come back, we will continue our season overviews. We will talk about the Green Bay Packers when we come back and, the kind of season they had and what they should do to improve their team going into the 2025 season. So, for one final time today, make sure to stick around. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to talk about the Green Bay Packers, talk about their season, and what they have to do to improve their team for the 2025 season. So the Packers were one of 3 NFC North teams to make the postseason, and not a single team in that division ended up winning a playoff game. They got knocked out by the Eagles. They began their season against the Eagles and lost, and they ended their season against the Eagles and lost. And Jordan Love took a bit of a step back this year. I mean, he was still good. 25 touchdowns, 11 picks, only threw for 3,389 passing yards, which I think was a step down from the year before, because the year before, I mean, it was a roller coaster of a season, but he finished with 32 touchdowns. Now, he did miss some games, had some injuries, got hurt. First game of the year against the Eagles in Brazil, the second to last play of the game. And then, also got hurt against the Jaguars as well. Yeah, he got banged up. And Malik Willis came in and did a nice job filling in. The Packers won a couple of games early on in the season against a couple of AFC South opponents, the Texans, or not the Texans. Well, they did beat the Texans with Jordan Love, though, but they beat the Titans and the Colts. And, they were able to tread water until Jordan Love came back. But, the Packers receivers, we've talked about them a little bit, and nobody really, I thought, took that next step. Now, Jaden Reed ended up being their leading receiver. But he only had 857 receiving yards on the year. And he had 6 touchdowns. Tucker Kraft was their second leading receiver. He had 707 receiving yards. He had 7 touchdowns. Christian Watson only had 620 yards and 2 touchdowns. Romeo Doubs, he had 4 touchdowns. He had 601 yards, and Dontavian Wicks had 415 and 5 touchdowns. But the Packers need to address the receiver position, and there's plenty of receivers out there that they can go out and get. Trade for maybe a DK Metcalf. Devontae Adams maybe can make his return to Green Bay. So, yeah, that's an area that they're going to have to address. However, a couple of free agent moves that they made last offseason, and they really knocked it out of the park with them. Josh Jacobs on offense. He was their best player on offense. 1,300 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns on the year. He was a stud for them. That was a good pickup. And then also on defense, Xavier McKinney, getting him from the Giants. That was a solid move. He finished with 8 interceptions on the year, 85 tackles, 11 passes defensed. Really put together a good year. Packers knocked it out of the park with those moves. Now, this offseason, we did talk about it. Another position that they could address is also pass rusher. They probably need another pass rusher. They could be trading Jair Alexander this offseason, so they're going to have to replace him. But you look back, though, at the Packers season, and one area that you could look at and say, yeah, they're going to have to improve. They lost all playoff teams, except the Bears. That's not that wasn't a good way to start the new year, losing to the Bears last game of the season. But other than the Bears, all of their losses came against playoff teams. They lost to the Eagles twice, they lost to the Vikings twice, and they lost to the Lions twice. Now, the second Lions game in Detroit, that's a game they could have won, but both Vikings games, they were playing catch up. They ended up being 2-point losses each, but especially the second one in Minnesota, the Packers, were down, going into the fourth quarter of that game. They were down 27-10. And I think they were down, they were down 27-10 going into the fourth quarter. And they were down 20-3 in the third quarter. But then they came back. There were sometimes last year where they just would get off to these slow starts. And then they're trying to establish the run with Josh Jacobs, which I get. Josh Jacobs has been their best player. But then all of a sudden they're down, and then they got to start throwing it a bunch of times. And then in that playoff game against the Eagles, the offense was not great. Josh Jacobs was their best player. He had that touchdown run where he was just barreling over people and dragging people to the end zone. But Packers got the ball to start the game, and then they turned it over immediately. But many people think that Keyshawn Nixon did have possession of the ball, and he believes he had possession of the ball. So, I mean, it's just against these top-tier teams in the NFC, the Packers just could not deliver. And they're going to have to improve on that next year. And next year is a big year, I think, for Jordan Love to bounce back. I do think injuries kind of had a role. And I do feel like if Jordan Love could stay healthy next year and they could maybe add another weapon, like a true number one wide receiver, then I think he will have a bounce-back season. I think this is a good Packers team. It's well coached. Matt LaFleur is a solid head coach. But you got to be better against the Lions and the Vikings. Now, the Vikings, they could have a completely different quarterback next year. Could be J.J. McCarthy starting. How is that going to fare against the teams in the NFC North? We'll see. But the Packers need to be better against good teams. And, going 1-5 in your own division, it's not good. Because, I mean, you look, Packers ended up finishing 11-6 on the season, and all of their losses, basically, came against their own division. And the Eagles. They went 5-0 against the AFC. They went 6-6 against the NFC. They were 6-3 at home, 5-3 on the road. But yeah, 1-5 in their own division. They had the same divisional record as the Bears. And the Packers, they could have lost. The Packers easily could have had the worst divisional record. Because if the Bears field goal, if Carlos Santos' kick doesn't get blocked by the Packers go 0-6 against their own division. And that's unheard of. But times are changing. And this division is going to be even better next year. Because you would figure the Bears are going to be better. The Lions aren't going anywhere. The Vikings, I do worry that there could maybe some kind of drop-off next year. I mean, because it's going to be hard to, win 14 games again. But once again, I go into next year thinking, how's the quarterback position going to be for the Vikings? Because if it's not Sam Darnold, it could be J.J. McCarthy. And J.J. McCarthy's coming off of an injury. How is he going to be? Who knows? But Packers are going to have to step it up. And looking at their cap situation and what kind of moves that they could possibly make. So right now, they're sitting at $45 million in cap space. So, they do have some flexibility. They do have some room to make moves, and they're going to have to. And they could always, clear cap space. But they're going to need a number one wide receiver. That is definitely on the top of the list. And maybe if you add that number one wide receiver, that just improves your whole offense. Now these other guys, they don't have to take on that mantle of being the number one wide receiver. And maybe in these number 2 and number 3 roles, they're better players because of it. They could benefit from it. And I think they do have talented receivers. It's just, I thought going into the year, one of them was going to separate themselves, and that just did not happen. And they also just became a run-first team with Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs had a big year. But you need to have a healthy year out of Jordan Love, and you need Jordan Love to step up and be that guy. And in the playoffs, I mean, it was tough. It was a tough game. Love threw 3 picks. I mean, the last one, he's just trying to make something happen. Eagles are a good team. But you know what? The Packers, they might have not have been able to score on offense, but their defense kept them in the game. This is a good team. It's just offensively, at times they struggled. And they struggled against a very good Eagles defense. And, you know, they're going to have to bounce back next year. And I thought that they were going to be a top 2 team in the division. I thought that they were going to, you know, give the Lions a run for their money. But it ended up coming down to the Vikings and the Lions. That's what it came down to. But it's going to be a little different next year. You know, because the Vikings are not winning 14 games. I think the Lions are still the top team. But it could be another team that, you know, maybe it's not the Vikings. Maybe the Packers do bounce back. Maybe the Bears bounce back. It's going to be interesting. But this is the best division in football. And we will talk about the Vikings on Monday when I go over their season. So make sure to tune in for that. But with that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channels. Make sure to leave a like and comments on the videos here. Try to respond to them. And as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. Enjoy the weekend. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.